Hello, I'm Maddie Roach, XYPN's executive business coach and host for XYPN Radio. Today, I'm excited to interview Caleb Brown, founder and CEO of New Planner Recruiting, a recruiting firm that works on placing top talent in this industry into firms around the country. Caleb Brown has over 20 years of experience in this industry, and his passion and expertise for this space speak for themselves throughout the next hour. I've chosen to bring Caleb back onto the podcast because he provides a unique perspective to you, our listeners. He knows the ins and outs of what firms are doing to attract top talent and keep that talent. But he's also deeply familiar with the shifting landscape of what that top talent is looking for when taking a job. Caleb and I riff a lot about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And yes, that means the hard truth about what to do when that top talent of yours eventually leaves to another firm. We discuss how perfecting your story and your brand and your value and your mission not only helps you attract your ideal clients, but can help you attract talent as well. Caleb talks stats from compensation to hiring timelines, and he gives you language to use in interviews and even gives you examples for work samples that you can use to vet applicants. I think what is most valuable in this interview, though, is the reminder that there's a lot to be offered by the generalist or the career changer applicant that may not be ready to hit the ground running per se, as a lot of advisors often say they're looking for as they hire, but in applicants who can offer a wide range of emotional intelligence and business acumen that aren't often taught in classrooms. I use this interview as an opportunity to ask Caleb a lot of the questions I receive as a coach here at XYPN. So I hope you find this interview both helpful and motivating to you. Without further ado, here's my interview with Caleb Brown. Hello, Caleb. Welcome to XYPN Radio. It is so nice to have you today.
Hey, great to be here. Glad to be back.
Welcome back, I should say. Listeners, Caleb, of course, has been on the XYPN Radio show a few years back, and we are excited to have him here because, as you can imagine, the hiring landscape for advisors is rapidly changing, and Caleb is an expert in that space. I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. But Caleb has a really unique perspective for all of our listeners, both from the candidates that are looking to be hired into advisory practices all the way to the perspective of what those advisory practices are offering those candidates. So today's episode is going to be able to dive into Caleb's expertise in that space. And Caleb, why don't you reintroduce yourself to our wonderful listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. I mean, I really at the core of it, I have three primary roles. So one of those roles is CEO of New Planner Recruiting, where we're helping RIA firms across the country hire paraplanners, associate planner, lead planner positions. So it's kind of a niche recruiting firm and the types of firms that we work with, and then also the positions that we recruit for. So we're not doing admin ops or client service or anything, but a lot of the comments and things that I share here will probably be helpful for firms hiring those positions, but I just want them to know that I focus more on the CFP track. So that's where I spend 90% of my time probably. And then I also teach at the University of Georgia's financial planning program every spring. So every spring I have between 50 and 100 graduating seniors that are going to come work in some of your member firms and are looking for jobs and some of them are going to start their own firms and just talking to them about the practice management side. So it's a lot like, for the practitioners out there, it's like, oh yeah, I wish my doctor client would have had this class in business management. That's what we're giving to the financial planning grads. So that way, when they show up, hopefully to your member firms, they know what an ACAT is. They know they know what technology. Versus me, when I showed up, my first firm, I had no idea how we made money. Really, I'm like, this is crazy. So trying to get them positioned for success. And then the last part is I've been out doing this for over 20 years. I've got a book of business at a RIA here in Georgia where I live that I work. I mean, I have a team that helps me so I can be as involved. I've got a great gig. I can be as involved as much or as little as I want to be. Right. So I still have my hand kind of in the CFP. So the practitioner side, academic, the professor side, academic side, and then the recruiter side.
Great. Awesome. Well, I will call on all of those personas of yours, Caleb, in the next 50 or so minutes. But Caleb, I would love to start with just a high-level overview of kind of what the market's like right now for those looking for positions at RIAs, similar to the XYPN member firms?
Yeah, certainly cooled off. We had a little bit of a panic and maybe a big panic in the COVID stuff that kind of rebounded pretty quickly. Firms were already behind on their hiring, I think, even when COVID hit. So, you fast forward to 2021, 2022. 2023, it was hot and heavy. A lot of firms hiring, a lot of talent moving. Then I think the interest rate stuff that, the increases that the Fed has taken, that's certainly slowed things down. Market's still doing good, but the slowed the number of firms looking to hire down. So you had fewer, you've got less competition if you're a hiring firm, which, that puts you in a little bit better spot. Still the needle is in the favor of the job seekers, not the hiring firms, just because there still are a lot of firms hiring. It's just less than it was a few years ago. So it's good news if you're a job seeker, maybe a little better news if you're a hiring firm.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that connection to the interest rates, what you're seeing on the side of the firms, and why they would choose to not hire as rapidly.
And I haven't taken a formal poll. That's really the only sort of big thing that's happened, really. Usually you see it, and we haven't had an interest rate increase like this in a long time. So most of the time it's a market downturn. Firms get panicked. My revenue is going to go down. The world's going to end. I can't afford this person. And that's when they pull back. But for whatever reason, I think it just, I don't know. That just slowed things down, which is what it's kind of intended to do, right? So it kind of, depending on what side of the fence you're on, it worked. But I just uncertainty. It's an election year, also. There's uncertainty. I think there's still, some fear out there. I think a lot of firms, frankly, have been like, "Oh, this is great! Like, we lost some people, or we had some retirements, and market's going up. We're still getting new clients, and like, hey, like we've gotten by without hiring anybody, and like our margins are really good right now. Like, let's just see how long we can keep this up." And the obvious problem with that is, right, I get calls in the afternoon after I go to lunch from the candidates in those firms saying, "Caleb, they haven't hired anybody in like a year. They said they were going to hire someone and they're killing me. Can you help me find another firm?"
Oh, fascinating. I'm wondering, are you seeing tech or AI play into, some of the efficiency on the side of the firms at all yet?
There's certainly, I would say pretty much everybody I talk to is using some sort of, at minimum, AI note taker or something. I even had a candidate on my podcast the other day say, "Yeah, I got started and I was taking the notes in the client meetings, but now we have AI that does that." And my question for him was like, "Well, what are you doing? Like, what value are you providing?" And, but I still think, there's just, it certainly can help with research and some notes and some marketing stuff, but for a lot, and there's probably firms, and I know you guys have had them on kits, like firms that are just having AI do all the heavy lifting, but most firms aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. I'd be interested in a couple of years to ask you the same question, just knowing how rapidly AI has entered the space. But let's turn our attention to the job seekers. You said the needle is in favor of the job seekers right now. What are you seeing job seekers look for and prioritize right now in 2024?
Well, at least the people that we deal with, they want to be CFPs, or they're on the CFP track, or they're already CFPs. Most of them, a good news for your firms, they want to be in the fee only. They want to be in the, the 1940 Act. They want to be into the fiduciary model. I don't have people calling me, begging me to go to broker dealer firms, wirehouses, banks, and part of that maybe just be selection bias, because they know I don't really, not all of our clients are fee only, but everybody is, fee based. At least we have a couple independent broker dealers that do really good planning, and that's fine. At the end of the day, we're agnostic. I don't really care. I'm going to recruit for who I think has the best model. And right now, that's the RI. Doesn't mean that will be 5 years from now or 10 years from now, because some of these other channels are trying to catch up and to pivot. But the talent wants to be where they're not having to sell They're not having to sell products. They're not having to bring in aunt and uncle. They're not having to bring, selling an annuity to grandma, where they can really, at least the entry level people that we deal with. We also deal with lead planners, and we can talk more about them too. I want to go somewhere, Caleb, where I'm not going to be under pressure to sell. I can be paid to learn, and I can take things slow. I can add at least some value by just taking some of the grunt work that the AI can't do off of the senior planners' plates. And in return, I just want to be mentored, and I want to be mentored more than just after a 3 or 6 week training period. I really kind of want it ongoing. And this maybe we'll get to this later. This is where there's a little bit of a disconnect, mostly probably with some of the older generations. It's like, okay, we hired you, trained you, kind of mentored you for a couple, months. Like, hey, let me know if you have any questions. My office is right here. It's like, ooh. And that's maybe how they wanted to be trained, but that's not really what this next generation, Gen Z. I mean, I was just having a conversation with a buddy outside the industry yesterday, like with his kids, like Gen Z takes so much affirmation, much affirmation. And I'm not knocking them. I've got kids, and I'm in millennial generation, but it's a different, the tough love approach that I adhere to, like my students at UGA, a lot of them don't like it, and they let me know they don't like it. And kind of my philosophy at that point is like, it's a senior level class. You're gonna have to get over it, because frankly, if you can't deal with me, you can't get through me, you are not going to be able to make it with some of these Gen X, these baby boomer firm owners that are out there.
Fascinating. Let's stay on this. In terms of, when it comes to mentorship and the job seekers are looking for, what would the ideal relationship be? And how can we justify that kind of on the side of the advisor to be able to invest that amount of time, resource, energy into that mentorship?
Well, a lot of people won't invest it because it's in their mind, it's worthless. It's a waste of time and money. And that's why you have a lot of high margin solo practices out there, under the NAPA community and some of the other ones. But look, if you want to have a small boutique sort of lifestyle practice that makes you a ton of money, you can do that. If you want to have something sort of bigger and beyond you, and you want to be able to take vacation and do whatever, and you want to have, what I'll call an enterprise, I mean, you're going to have to hire some people. And at least the planner positions, advisor positions that I recruit for, an ideal scenario is people really at any level. I mean, especially the entry level. They want to come sit next to someone who knows what they're doing and be in every single client meeting, be involved in every email, every video call, every phone call, whatever it is, and just sit there and learn how these senior people deal with people and get these clients to do what the planner wants them to do. Oftentimes when the client doesn't want to do that, and then make them think it was their idea to do that. So there's a lot of things, and as good as the UGA and all these other CFP programs are, you don't learn that coming out. This is different than being a physician. You complete medical school, residency, fellowship, you come out, there's no training. You know what you're doing. You don't need on the job training. So we're still working on sort of getting that up. But the firms that offer that say, I mean, here's what I encourage firms to say, but you got to make sure you deliver on this. You can't just say this. Hey, come work for our firm. You're kind of, you're a career changer. You're new. Like, we're going to teach you everything we know, and we're going to get you to where you want to go quicker than everybody else. Like my job is to pour everything I have into you and get you to my level or above in 24 months, 36 months, whatever it is. And I'm just, maybe not use that language, or the time frame may be different, but just that's the mindset. That's the message that needs to be communicated versus, and I know you want to talk about this, kind of an average firm is like, yeah, we're a profitable firm. We got a couple hundred clients, and we've got good technology, and we're part of XYPN, and hey, come over here. We'll pay you a salary, and, we'll do this, and, we'll do some fun trips and post some stuff on LinkedIn, and it'll be great. It'll be like, I mean, that's not as compelling to this next generation. I mean, like, to me, it's like, man, trying to get a job in 2001, you're going to pay me a salary. That's super compelling. Like, I'm all about this, and I don't have
I'll
to
be
bring
there.
in any clients. And I still think, and I am starting to see a shift, because there for a while I would get, when I first started the recruiting firm, it's like, well, Caleb, I'm offering a salary and a career track and an opportunity for equity ownership. And I'm like, man, it sounds awesome. Guess what? Everybody else is doing that.
Mm. My mind goes to how competitive is a recent grad versus someone with actual experience. I mean, do you have numbers on that around how many applications a lead planner job gets every post?
We do. I mean, the newer planners, that's like a feeding frenzy. Now, coming out of these CFP programs, it is competitive because you have a lot of what I'll call high profile, maybe celebrity RIA types that come in, recruit, and also big asset management firms. Like, because that's another awesome seat that I have. I'm able to sit and see what all my UGA students are getting from these RIAs. A lot of times in Atlanta or Charlotte, these very attractive cities to Gen Z, Gen Y, um, and basically some of these large asset managers, they come in, it's like, who do you want to interview? Well, we want to interview everybody. Well, what do you mean? Well, we'd like to hire all your students. Like, whoa. And they have an advantage, frankly, because they know exactly how many people they're going to need in Philadelphia in 36 months. They know how many people they're going to need in Charlotte in 12 months. They know exactly how many. Your RIA with $100 million, they don't know. I mean, they can't, they're a little bit more reactive, right? It's like, hey, Caleb, I need somebody now. And I tell them, okay, it's going to take 60 to 70 days to get somebody. And that's pretty good, 2 to 3 months. So but these bigger firms are kind of offering whatever my students want, really. So that's another, I mean, in terms of cash compensation, health insurance, I mean, it's, hey, come join us. We're going to put you on the phones. And that is a challenging component, because one of my strategies that I've revealed publicly before is like, let these people go to these big wirehouses and asset managers. Let them go learn phone skills. Let them learn professionalism. Let them learn how to work in an office. Let them figure out like, okay, this is not really financial planning. Let them get their CFP. Let them get licensed. Then just recruit them out of there 2 or 3 years later. That's a great strategy. I mean, it takes time, and that's why we have the business that we do and have had the success, but that's a good lever to pull. I kind of went off on a tangent on the new college grads, but my makeup, half of my clients say, we want someone brand new. Doesn't necessarily mean out of college, but just career changer, someone who's finishing up a CFP program, younger, newer, whatever it is. And the other half are like, no, we hate those people. Only find me somebody with experience. So it's not a clear trend. It really just comes down to the firm owner's personality and experience, and maybe how they were trained and how they brought up, and just, it's really personal preference.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. And, from where I sit as a coach, there's so many advisors that actually several years in really want to start giving back to this industry and actually look at hiring as a way to do that. And so people who are natural teachers, people who are natural mentors, this could be a really fabulous way to attract some of that top talent and compete with some of those larger firms if you can promise that kind of mentorship. But the hard part is justifying the time investment into it. So many people, by the time they're ready to hire, they feel like they're on fire. And although they may have an interest in mentoring and training up people, the amount of time that they have to take to actually do that is hard to justify. And so, listen to this podcast, listen to XYPN Radio ahead of time, so you can stay ahead of the curve, I suppose, as you begin to approach your hiring needs.
I mean, I get it. I mean, what I would say, and I've said this for the last 20, I mean, you're going to have to spend time training whoever you hire. I mean, just on your systems and your setup. And a lot of these XYPN people that I talk to and I recruit for have very strong core values and specific ways they left firms and they had big blow-ups and nasty divorces from some of these other places they left. And you may want to consider, and this is where a lot of them are, at least that we work with, like, find me somebody that's got a clean slate that I can brainwash in a good way, because that's what someone did with me, versus getting somebody over here that I've got to unwind because they have all this, they've done planning old school or a crappy way, and mine's the better way. So, I mean, look, and I'm not talking about you need to spend half your day sitting there. I mean, but it's like, hey, you're an intern, you're a new hire. Hey, I'm about to meet with the Browns. Just come on in here and sit down. Just take some notes. Watch the body language of the clients. If you have if you see something or you think I'm, certainly, raise your hand or send me a text or send me a note on the chat or whatever it is. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. And then, okay, we finished the meeting with the Browns. That was 2 hours. Why don't you come into the office or get on Zoom real quick and let's have a 10-minute debrief?
Yes.
I mean, so I'm not saying the person needs to spend triple the amount of time. And then here's another one. Client emails in. Okay. Send it to your paraplanner. Hey, this is what the Smiths just wrote. How would you handle this?
Right.
Okay. You write a response and you forward it to me, and then we'll go over it together. And oh, by the way, I'm expecting that we'll do this probably a couple dozen times, maybe more. And then you're going to start getting it 90%, getting the finished product 90% of the way there, not 10%. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, and I probably failed as a manager too over my career. It's hard to come up with those guidelines, but laying out those expectations, like, we're not just going to keep doing this forever, but I want to sort of get you confidence before we pull the training wheels off. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm talking about in the mentorship. So I'm not saying that they need to, they got to work their 8-hour day. And then it's like, oh man, I got to spend it's like studying for the CFP all over. I got to spend 3 hours in the evening looking for my intern or my associate planner. That's not what I'm in.
I'm glad that you talked a bit about, trying to get someone in with a clean slate, because I do hear from advisors that I work with that they want someone to hit the ground running. They want someone to come in and know how to host client meetings, have their book, become profitable for their business. And I do think that's a hard ask, especially with the amount of kind of, previous experience people are coming in with that they, as you say, have to be unwired from. So can you talk a bit to the pros and cons of hiring someone and maybe remaining laser focused on this? I need them to hit the ground running versus let's put in 6 to 12 months of real mentorship and ramp up.
News flashed to them. If they can hit the ground running, they probably don't need you. So why, especially if they can get the clients. Now look,
interesting.
I have people say that to me too. And we've certainly found candidates or people that have hit the ground running, but it's been, they either did not like the business development component. They did not want to be a small business owner. So they said, we're not going to start our own firm. We'd rather hit the ground. And to your point, those people are a lot harder to find, because if you know what you're doing and you can hit the ground running, most of those people aren't looking for a job. And if they are, there might be something going on there that's below the surface that you need to investigate and see what's going on. Maybe they're not very good. Maybe they're not good at their job. You have a screening process. So, yes, every firm owner wants to, but it's like, this is part of being a business owner. This is what you signed up for when you left that big RIA firm because they didn't make you a partner. Mm. You get to deal with all this stuff now. You get to deal with the HR. You get to deal with the training. And maybe you'll see some of the frustrations that they may have had, right? So it's just, I love talking to these people that got upset and left their own firms, and they're like, oh, yeah, I can kind of see that. Yeah, it's almost like the roles were reversed, and not always the case, because some of the firms that they left were just poorly managed, but that's part of being an owner. It's also part of being an owner and having the risk of, you could spend 6 to 12 months and do everything right that I just said, mentoring and spending time and giving them whatever they want. And guess what? They could leave.
They could join XYPN while you're still a member.
That's right. They could say, I'm out of here. I'm going to call Maddie and go set up my own lodge, my own firm. And boom. That's part of the risk on hiring somebody. If you don't want that, don't hire anybody, is what I would tell them.
And that has happened. It's one of the harder positions we at XYPN are put in, and we do respect the privacy of that applicant into XY. and their right and choice to start their own firm. But that scarcity mindset plagues our advisors, and advisors that are approaching this hiring idea of, but what if I lose them? And objectively, it's a very difficult operational issue. If you have a client, if you have an advisor that's serving 45 clients and they leave, how you manage that capacity and to rehire and replace them. But I think you make such good points that this is all part of the journey and it's part of your business plan. That how do you handle an exit from a staff member, regardless of what the reason for that exit is?
And let me just address that for a minute, because you're right. But where the industry, profession is now, from when I got in over 20 years ago, yeah, if you're XYPN member, you got 200 clients, you're handling 100 clients, somebody else associates, and that person that's a trouble, because you just got 200 clients now dumped onto you. However, with the growth of the profession, there's all these resources. A lot of them are virtual, and most of your people are virtual anyway. So you got Sue Chesney out there. She can do the plans for you. You got, VAs, you got internal stuff. I mean, can you hold the fort down and keep the firm from blowing up for a year or a couple of years till you get someone hired? Absolutely, you can.
Right.
Is it going to be tough? And are you going to have to put in late night? And yeah, but remember, that's what you signed up for. That's why you're making all the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say there's certainly, they need to mitigate risk, and that's a concern. But the profession is in such a different place than it was even just 10 years ago. I mean, with so many now, can you can't just call somebody up and like expect them to have a relationship with 100 clients. I understand that, but I'm saying, can you piecemeal something together and keep it afloat, keep the clients from leaving? Yes, you can. You have more levers to pull than even maybe 5 years ago, because
Totally.
Every month or every year that goes by, there's new solutions coming out to help the financial planning profession.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I'm interested in, say some XYPN advisors and listeners are interested in getting in front of some of these Gen Z new recent grads from UGA. Outside of the mentorship, what else are you seeing young, smart, sharp top candidates considering and looking for when they're vetting their options?
A lot of it depends on their personality, but I would say I am seeing a little bit of a trend the first trend is that the students that I had during COVID do not want virtual. So if your firm is virtual, it's going to be harder to attract those, and they don't have an office to go to.
Wow.
So be aware of that. Generally outside of that, we have a mismatch in the talent and then the hiring firm pool right now. Because the majority of the talent wants some sort of very loose, hybrid, flexible schedule. The majority of the firms hiring want somebody in person. And frankly, I've got XYPN people that I'm recruiting for right now that say, no, in person. So don't kick them out if you find out who that is. In all seriousness, I'm just kidding. So they've got to be careful on the virtual thing. And then they do like going to bigger firms. So this is something bigger. These bigger RIAs in Atlanta and Charlotte, they gobble up people. And I think it's part of the community thing. That's why so many of them go to the unnamed asset manager that I was talking about earlier, because it's like, this is great. I'm going to go up there with like 25 different cohorts from all these other schools. Like, this is just like college. They don't have that in a 7-person, 6-person, 10-person, all virtual or smaller RIA. Whereas when I was looking for something, it's like, I want to go to the small firm where I only have to share my boss with one person, nobody else. It's me. I get everything. Maybe it's just selfishness. That's how I fell into my job, right? Versus you go to a bigger firm, well, your boss, there's like 10 people they have to mentor. So back to your earlier point, like, oh my gosh, this is a full-time job mentoring these people. Mm-hmm. So I would say be aware. So you can't do anything about the way your firm is structured and the size of it right now. So maybe just you put that aside and really try to, but I think the core, back to the core values, like the Gen Y and the Gen Z are really focused, and a lot of your membership is focused on this too. Hey, I want to do financial planning for people that don't have any money. So as soon as somebody can get that figured out on how they can make money doing that, they're going to be on to something, because the talent is very interested in that component. And the calls that I get, especially from more senior people, experienced CFPs, and I mean, I'm talking these people are very successful, making tons of money. Caleb, can you find me another firm? Why? Well, it's not rewarding for me. First, my firm has $5 million minimums. And two, I don't like working with these people because they're pushy and they're bossy. And it's like, well, I mean, somebody at that wealth level, I was just talking with Kitsis about this recently. Somebody at that wealth level has their own company probably, because usually you can't save your way into, north of, maybe 10 million. And they're bossing people. They're the boss. They're bossing people around, and they've created a company. So that's how they treat their financial planner. Or it's unrewarding stuff like trying to find the insurance policy on an airplane. Like, that's not moving the needle. That's not rewarding or fulfilling. Taking somebody from 10 million to 11 million, that's not very rewarding. What is rewarding is taking little Sally Smith, who lost her husband 5 years ago, and she's got 500,000, and that's all she's got. And we have to make that last. And I know I've got to be available. Caleb, I do not want to take a vacation. I need your coaching on this, because if little Sally Smith calls, I want to be there because she needs me. We're a team. I'm part of her. She's paying us like $3,500 a year. I'm not going to let anything bad happen to her. I'm always going to be available for her.
I love that.
That's kind of what they're looking for.
How do you coach advisors and practices that are looking to hire this kind of talent to convey that culture? What's the best way to put their values in front of these candidates in terms of core values, who they work with? How would you coach an advisor to do that?
Well, a lot of it should be on the website. There's a bunch of vendors, and you guys they need to have it on the website. Walks on the beach, the lighthouses, all that stuff. We need to get away from all that. Right. So I had to tell as a prospective client that reached out to me, because I pulled their ADV, I looked at the website, and I had to deliver some very bad news. Like, hey, that homepage picture? Go to this website. Here's another firm that's in a different state. They have the same one. It's like, they had a bad day that day.
I use Compass and Lighthouse as examples all the time. It just doesn't differentiate you. It's for your clients or future talent. So listen to Caleb.
So website, hey, here's the target clients. Hey, here are some local community and volunteering and pro bono. We Homes for Heroes. We take part in that. We volunteer. We help injured service members, help them. They have to meet with a CFP before they can get a house. That type. All that could be on the website. The ADV, you can list out sort of the target client, sort of the fee structure, all that. And the top candidates will look at that. They'll look at the ADV. But I think just in the interviews, I actually just got some feedback. This is real time, like earlier this week. Like, hey, when you sent me on that interview, Caleb, it was great. I just went in there. It was a small little conference room. It was a round table, and I just sat down with both the guys, and we just kind of had a candid, just sort of, very relaxed conversation about why they started the firm, who they're looking to help, what their goals are, and who they think could be a good fit here, and what their core values are. And, it just made it very relaxing for me. And so this is feedback I'm getting from the candidate, and just sort of laying it out there and not being overly formal and, stuffy. The Gen Z types, my students, they necessarily are not looking to go to and I currently already addressed this with the minimums, but the stuffy sort of wood paneled, 32nd floor high, that's not really what this group is looking for right now. Okay. So it's just, every sort of everyday people, making an impact on their lives, seeing the tangible, benefits. So what I would tell the XYPN members that are wanting to hire people, share some of those. Here's what a good candidate would ask. What has been the most meaningful, what's been the most memorable thing you've done for a client? What's been the most meaningful and rewarding thing? And your members should be able to say, boom, is when I helped Sally Smith do this. When man, they like, and look, don't make this up, but I'm just like, hey, we saved a marriage. Like we saved a marriage. Like, I mean, like that's pretty substantial, right? So talking about that versus like, yes, we really need to get those plans done. And here's a laundry list of crap that we want you to do. I mean, yes, there's going to be some grunt work and all that, but like try to paint the picture for them.
Right.
Knowing like, hey, this is the stuff I got to do to get to that level where I can help, save the marriage or, get the kids. The kid wanted to go to Penn or wherever, and we got it funded, on somebody. It's a blue collar. Like that's amazing.
It's amazing how much of your advice is similar to the advice we as coaches give to advisors about how to attract their ideal clients. They have to have their story. They have to have their value adds. They have to have a real essence of what they do, why they do it. And anyone who hasn't really been able to verbalize that isn't going to attract the ideal clients and certainly won't be competitive in the hiring field. So having that story and having that deep understanding of what your major successes with clients have been and why people should work with you is good for all sides of the business.
I kind of feel like those are somewhat linked, right? If they can't tell the story to attract the clients, they're not going to need to hire anybody.
Totally. So I often see advisors who are on fire looking to hire, but there's so much work here that Caleb is giving us advice around and how to prepare. In terms of the actual hiring process for advisors, any recommendations around like work samples or vetting the actual quality of these candidates?
Yeah, I said earlier, I mean, they have the job seekers have most of the leverage. That doesn't mean you just need to bend over backwards and just say, okay, we'll give you whatever. And that's not what I'm saying. Some sort of, interview process, conversations, whether it's in-person video or phone, maybe you do one of each, if you don't want to make your process too long, but just to kind of get a sense on how they handle themselves on each one of those medias. And then really, I mean, some sort of, look, if they're an experienced CFP that's been doing this 10, 15, 20 years, like, okay, you look at the credentials, you look at their book of business, the revenue, the client. I mean, that's pretty easy and more straightforward to see who's successful. You have to get lined up on the philosophies. But the newer people, back to my iceberg, and Kits just uses this all the time. I love it. Like the huge chunk underneath the water is what sunk the Titanic, not the piece at the top. And a lot of these sort of career changers or new players could have, not necessarily they're intentionally trying to hide them, but just have skeletons sort of in the closet that you have to overcome. It's like, oh yeah, when that person gets stressed out, they just check out and they need some me time and they're out for the next 2 days. Not that that's necessarily a deal killer, but wouldn't you like to know that,
Right.
Or when they get stressed out or when they have too many priorities, they start missing details. They blow up the details. So there needs to be some sort of exercise, and depending on what you're hiring for, let me see if I can come up with a couple of examples here off the cuff, but like if it's a CSA or something, just like give them a client fact sheet and then just have them copy it over to an account application. See how quick they do it, and then see how many mistakes they make. Okay. Or have them somebody left a voicemail and they're putting a note into your CRM. Okay. So maybe a paraplanner. Here's a client questionnaire, and intentionally like leave things out or put things that might be contradictory in there and say, okay, put this into, have them pull up the Money Guide Pro or whatever, Right Capital, whatever, and have them just try to put some stuff in and then see if they come back and say, ooh, we're missing this. Ooh, this was contradictory. So I'm going to make a note for my senior advisor over here. Like, hey, I didn't know what to do with this. Like, see how far they take it. Okay. It's just little exercise. I mean, you can come up with the exercises based on the position that you're hiring for and how your firm operates.
Really good ideas. Thank you for those actual examples. That's very helpful. How long should an advisor expect the hiring process to take from job posting to actually like button seat type days?
Right now, we're professionals and we're doing this full time all day long, and we kind of carved out a niche. And I said earlier at the top of the call, it's about 60 to 70 days right now. So 2 to 3, I would just say 2 to 3 months If you're going to have an experienced, like professional outsourcer do it, and it could be longer depending on the situation. It could be shorter. I mean, if you're doing it yourself, I mean, I would say, a lot of times I have do-it-yourselfers that have tried for, a couple quarters, maybe, probably at the most, and then they throw their hands up and say, "Okay, Caleb, you do this."
Yep.
We gave it a go, but I don't know, a couple months. I mean, if you have something attractive, you should be able to get, some people to talk to, and then you can kind of spend a couple weeks going through a process with them, and get them a start date, run some background checks and things like that, and so, I mean, I think it's real. I mean, a couple months. I mean, some of your members hire people in a couple weeks. I mean, it's all over the board, but that's what I say. You certainly don't want to rush it. But to my earlier point, even though I love data and I'm a tough love guy and I love putting sort of things for candidates that demonstrate effort, because over my 20-year career, the people that have looked best on paper have not been the highest performers. The people that have exhibited the intangibles have. And here's what some of those intangibles are. Just conscientiousness, so emotional intelligence, awareness, follow through, so just doing what they say they're going to do, passion for their profession. Hey, financial planning is all I'm doing. I know I could go over to investment banking. I'm not doing it. I could make twice as much money. I'm not doing it. Commitment to their career. Yeah, I got the CFP, but I'm working on this. And, I signed up for the Kids' tax course. I'm doing this. I've signed up for George Kinder's. I mean, I'm just constantly doing stuff, sense of urgency, passion for the profession. I lost my conscientiousness. Those are the types of things that, and a lot of times those don't show up on a resume. You've got to interview, and that's going to give you one small piece of the iceberg below the water, but also interacting with them frequently through a screening process. You can glean some of those things. Okay. Totally. I mean, there's other tools like Colby and DISC that you can use as well to help with that. But a lot of it is just interacting and just sit back. I said I spent 90% in the recruiting seat. My job is 100% just sitting back, observing people and reporting on that and assessing that and reporting that to my clients. And your members may not have the luxury of doing that. Because it's like, look, Kel, I got a business to run. I can't spend all this time doing all this. Understood. Do the best you can. Get a job posting up there. Have them put forth some sort of, can they follow directions? Can they go through a process? Can they, read the instructions and then interview them and then get them in there?
As a hiring manager at XY for years, it was always fascinating. Can you follow the directions of the application? And people who don't, it's really wild, and it's a waste of time. But those little hints and nuggets along the application process tell you a lot about a candidate.
And let me just say one other point. Trust your gut. You're a good financial planner for a reason. You have a good sense on whether this person's going to be a good prospect on the marketing side. And your gut probably hasn't led you astray too many times. Same thing on the recruiting side. If you see some red flags, but Caleb, we just signed 6 new clients, man. I'm bored. Like, just be careful. I'm not saying don't do it. Just be careful, because a lot of times those red flags, when hires don't work out, people start like, oh yeah, they did. Oh yeah, we kind of brushed it off. And there's like 3 or 4, 5 different things that popped up. And the other point that I wanted to make on this was, look, you can go through a perfect process. You can do everything right. You can take them through all this testing, but you're never going to know 100% until you get them in there and let them try. And I know that's not what they want to hear, but that's part of being a business owner. That's part of doing it.
Well, I'm glad you talked about some of these intangibles, and I might be biased because I was a generalist as I started my career at XY 10 years ago with the title of director of getting shit done. But there's a real value to be able to bring in a generalist into a company and allow them to flourish and find the right seat. So especially bringing some like actual business acumen to the firm is so much what advisors crave. That, although mentorship is what they'll provide, so many people just want people that get the business, that understand the importance of client relationships, the importance of conscientiousness and emotional intelligence. So, is there any other tips you give to people maybe considering career changers or others, as opposed to some of these, like, I want the most highly decorated, top of the class candidate?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's, hey, Caleb, I want your top female 4.0 student. I mean, if I had $1 for every time someone said that, I'd do the recruiting for free, probably. Just, I mean, look, the career changers they have a lot of advantages, right? I mean, look at the business that you're in. You're in selling experience, maturity, wisdom.
Mm.
Like like when I was 22, I didn't really have any of that. So there's a trade-off there, right? A lot of these career changers, they have done their own planning for their own family. They've gone through, marriages and divorces and births of kids and college educations and buying and selling homes, that they've lived life. And that helps put them in a little bit better seat to counsel someone on some of these things. And I'm not saying like, oh, you got to go get divorced to be able to talk. That's not what I'm saying. But just they're a better position to be able to talk through some of these. They have probably a little bit more confidence than a 21, 22-year-old. Mm-hmm. And where we run into problems usually with the career changers is, well, Caleb, I've been successful and it's not rewarding. And Silicon Valley, like, hey, Caleb, I'm getting paid $250,000 to work for said tech company. And here's my job all day long. I just do A/B testing on an icon and I move it from one side of the way, and my job sucks. Yeah. And I want to get into something more rewarding. And, it's like, okay, well, do you know what you're looking at in terms of like an entry-level planner position? Right. I mean, you're like, are you okay with going from $250 down to $60,000 a year? Yeah. Like a lot of times the firms that are looking to hire them aren't comfortable with that. But wow. We have a major disconnect with a lot of the career changers on the comp. I'm not saying we don't have that on the new college grad stuff either, because some of these new college grads, their professors and their parents have said, yeah, this is what you need to ask for. And it's like ridiculous, right? So I've had to deal with some of those issues. So I'm not saying you're going to eliminate the risk either way, but to your point, the career changers, look, hey, I'm a retired engineer. I'm a retired real estate person. Sometimes they bring in clients, a 22-year-old like yours truly wasn't bringing in any clients for the first 3 or 4 years, 5 years of his career. Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons there. And it's going to come down to personality. That person is still moldable, maybe not as moldable as you want them to be, but they're just further along. Maybe they're not as flexible because they can't relocate because they got kids in school and some other things. I mean, we could go on all day long about the differences between career changers and experienced people and college grads, but I hope that helps paint the picture on the maturity and the experience piece, which is valuable. And they have a sense they've worked in another career. Here's the biggest risk for some of your clients, like if they hire someone right out of school. Well, I went through my degree, I got a 4.0, and I'm the female top, but like, I really don't want to do this. This isn't what I thought it was. Yeah. Ouch. I mean, you're probably, could that happen with a career changer? Sure. But most people aren't going to, like, I just had somebody I placed in Boston, making $150,000 a year, had to go to the spouse and say, look, this is what I want to do. And go to the kid. This was a big sacrifice for them to do this. I mean, they're not just going to up and leave and like, oh, well, I'm out of here. It didn't go with, it didn't go the way I thought. They are committed. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk comp for a second. What are you seeing in terms of the ranges for kind of each of those levels that you're talking through, from CSA to lead planner? And give us a hard truth. I mean, how important is comp when it comes down to it versus things like flexibility, PTO, maybe even equity?
We have some internal proprietary research when we surveyed. It was about 1,000 Gen Y and Gen Z people in our database. All right. So it wasn't the general population. And cash compensation, it was in the top 10, but it was a lot further down than down the I mean, a lot of it was employee benefits, health insurance, PTO. I mean, it was like PTO is a huge deal for these
Give
people.
people time
So, I
off.
mean, just give people time off. We have a lot of people subscribing to the Angie Erber's sort of just unlimited PTO model, but people, look, they have a lot of them have student loans that haven't been forgiven, and they want to live in an expensive apartment in Atlanta and Charlotte and Nashville and all these cool, hip, Boulder, Colorado, expensive, cities. So they need to be compensated. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're working on right now to release. This is early August. We're releasing our 2024 salary report before the end of the month, and the range sort of since we don't really place client service associates, I don't really have good hard solid data for you there. But for like the paraplanner, I mean, and this is nationwide average. Okay, so this is big firm, small firm, wire house, lots of different channels, and at different zip codes, right? So the nationwide average for base salary is about 76,000 is what a paraplanner is looking for. And that's like in our model, that's like a 0 to 2 year person. Okay. So someone right out of school, like we kind of talked about at the top of the call.
Is that a CFP candidate?
Yes. I mean, they've probably completed the education. They may have passed the exam, but they're not a CFP yet. Okay?
Got it.
So the next one is an associate planner. So this is your solid second chair, right? Who can maybe do some, just taking off more of a burden from the lead planner. And that's like a 2 to 5 year person. Okay. So, and that person was like 94,000. So when the way we do our salary report, and this is different than Schwab and Investment News, where they're just sending a questionnaire to the firm owner saying, fill in how much you pay your people. Okay. Which is fine. Ours is when I and the other recruiters here are talking to the candidates, like kind of what they're currently making is kind of irrelevant. It's what is it going to take to get them to look at this job or move? That's the data point we're drilling in on. And a lot of times they're not far off. I mean, our data pretty much matches up with a lot of the other surveys out there. But the associate planner 2 to 5 year, that's about 94,000. Okay. So it's base comp. And then the lead planner, which is kind of 5 year mark, and maybe above, was like 125. Okay. So the tranches were like 75, 95, 125 is where people kind of are. And sometimes there's outliers in there. Sometimes, I mean, it's just because sometimes I get people that say, hey, Caleb, I'm making this amount of money. And I already alluded to the career changers, but man, if you can find me something in an RIA, fee only, NAPFA firm, XYPN firm, dude, I'll work for a lot less. Wow. I mean, so that's why we approach it the way we do, because but sometimes that can kind of skew the numbers.
Okay, fascinating, and we will link to that salary study so long as we have your blessing, Caleb, when this
that's great.
Released. I get this question a lot from the advisors I coach around, they're looking to maintain a pipeline of talent. And I encourage advisors always to have a few candidates that they could tap and say that there's an opening if and when they're ready to hire. But is it advantageous for, say, a small firm to have a apply here at any point button on their website, or a job description kind of hung up in perpetuity that invites applicants to apply? Like, are you seeing your graduates or the people applying to these jobs looking at firms that have that?
It's reasonable for firm, your About Us team page, and then the careers, they can click on that. And then if it says, we don't have anything right now, but feel free to send your resume to the email, that's fine. You're just creating your own applicant tracking system, your own database. I mean, that's fine. I mean, you may not, I mean, I tell candidates all the time, and I spent a whole chapter in my book that I wrote last year about this, like, reach out to people. You want to go work at a firm in Bozeman, Montana, get on the internet and find someone and reach out to them and email them and call them and, demonstrate that passion for the profession. They may tell you no, but maybe they tell, so that could turn into something. I also would suggest I don't think you should just say, leave a fake job description up there if it's not really an opening. That's going to agitate people.
Okay.
And word spreads fast in this industry. So, you got to be careful there. Um, Boots on the ground. I mean, like, here is why we've had a lot of success at New Planner Recruiting, because earlier on when I started the firm, I flew around to all the CFP programs. And I had boots on the ground, and I went and spoke, and I went and interviewed, and I went and did mock interviews, and I talked to thousands of new CFP, and a lot of those people I couldn't do anything with, at least that year. But I developed a relationship with them, and now I'm placing CFPs with 10 years of experience. So, and you know, we can charge a lot for that. And some of your people are like, look, I'm not doing that. I mean, look, if you're in a college town, if you can't take 2 hours out of your day every spring to go to speak in Caleb Brown's practice management class, you got bigger business management issues, because you could get 5 resumes and you do that for 4 or 5 years. Well, look, now you've got a pipeline of experienced CFPs. Now, they may be at other firms, and they probably are, but you could reach out to them, and that's a good place to start. So a lot of firms just like, I'm not doing that. I don't have the time. And that's why us and other vendors and outsourcers are here. But you can do that yourself.
Totally.
You know, you can do that yourself if you want to, and you want to take the time.
And it's good practice to be able to share your story and what you've built and why you're an important company to be in this space. So, Caleb, I could absolutely interview you for another 3.5 hours, and we'd be here into the night. So I'm going to respect our listeners and you, my friend, and wrap this interview up. Any final words of advice? Or actually, I'll change that ending question I usually ask. And I'll ask you to kind of give us your ideas of where this industry and this space is moving to in the next couple of years. Anything you anticipate really impacting the market for both people looking to hire and to be hired?
Yeah, a couple thoughts, just one on the tips I would for your listeners, and then maybe some futures. I mean, I would just say, you don't have to be a $1 billion firm, even though that's what the industry, that's who gets the awards, that's who's out there. It's I mean, bigger is not always better on this. Create the business you want for the life you want, for your family situation. Doesn't matter what this other person is doing. Exactly what you tell your clients. Okay, have patience too. It's like, well, I'm not growing fast enough. Like, says who? Right? It takes time to build this up. And I know, you know, you guys on the coaching side say that as well, but just have patience. I mean, it takes a while to get that snowball rolling, but once you do, it's massive. You know, it's a massive force once it gets going. I'm not big on the futuristic stuff, like predicting future and things. I mean, it is a little bit of a bummer kind of for me, because all these firms that I started recruiting for, you know, 15 years ago that were 100, 200, 300 million, now they're like 3 billion. And they're like, hey, Caleb, we have our own HR person. We don't need you. Or, hey, a private equity or an aggregator. We just got a like humongous multiple, and we took it. And I can't work with those firms any longer. So, but I don't think it's sort of Mark Hurley, like, you're only going to have 5 or 6 sort of creative planning mariners out there, and then you're going to have everybody else is going to be under 100 million. I don't think it's going to be that bifurcated, because it certainly it hasn't done that in the accounting world, right, or even in the legal field. So, but I am excited about this next generation, because their core values and a lot of your members, their core values, their motivations, they're different than the founding generation. I mean, it's different. I mean, just for one example, like, it's not about just building up a bigger firm and piling up money for themselves. Okay. And that's more commonly attributed with baby boomers, who were taught that, you know, there was lingering effects from the Great Depression. So I understand why they operate that way. And then just this massive push. We have a lot of people really pushing hard and fighting in the good fight to try to bring financial planning to every single American that wants it. I mean, that's fabulous. And the pressure is on me and others to like get more people in the profession to be able to deliver on that. So we don't have to tell that person who's like, if we change the perception that what financial planners really do, and it's not just for wealthy people, and somebody from middle America says, yeah, I want to work with somebody. And you're like, we look at the assembly line, it's like, we don't have anybody there. I mean, there's people that want to get in this profession. And we're getting more and more recognized and familiar, but I want more. I'm not satisfied with the current stuff and just looking for, projecting. I don't, people might come on my podcast. How'd you get in the industry? Oh, well, I kind of fell into it, or I went to school that I felt like, no, I want them. Hey, my parents or, whatever it is, financial planner, I'm following their footsteps, just like they would like a professional athlete or some other, highly respected field. And the needle is moving. We're getting closer, and that's exciting.
Very much. We're very aligned on that, Caleb. It was so nice to have you on this podcast. Your passion is clear, your expertise is solid, and you have been such a great resource to XYPN member firms over the years. You have followed in Kitsis's track of giving away a lot for free in terms of your research and different resources. So please do check out newplannerrecruiting.com. Caleb, thank you so much for being on XYPN Radio, for being a friend and ally of our network over the years. And I look forward to having you back over the next couple of years.
Thanks, Maddie.